So last time we went through our UI manager, our game manager a little bit. And in this video, we're going to spend some time actually kind of focusing on some art. So if I press play here, you can see we start off with our welcome screen. But what I'd like to happen is we essentially have a welcome panel that kind of like slides in off camera. So I'm going to change this to 16, keep it at 16 by 9 so I can see my panel here. And then in my welcome panel here, I'm going to select this text and I'm just going to name it title. And so that's the title of our game. And I'm going to rename it Space Invaders here. And I'm going to extend this out just a little bit in each direction so the Space Invaders kind of sits. And I'm going to move it all the way outside of the view like this. Now, the welcome panel, let's go ahead and hide these. And because our welcome panel actually doesn't have any image in the background, it's just sort of like this empty thing. So let's go ahead and animate this. So here's our Space Invaders text. And what I want to do is I want to use a timeline. So this is sort of new. We've done animations in the past in other classes, but this we're going to be using a window, and then we're going to go down to animation, or I'm sorry, sequencing up top actually, which is interesting because normally it's down here, but sequencing, and then we're going to go to timeline here. And for our timeline, we're going to create a new timeline. And I'm going to name this, we'll go to our art folder, and actually we want to go to, keep messing this up even though I told you all to do this, but let's see, UI, sorry, I'm like jumping out of the project now, assets. And then we want to go to our games, Space Invaders. And then, so inside of here, I'm just going to make a new folder. I'm going to call this animation. And then inside this, we're going to save this as title timeline and hit save. And so what I want to do with this title is I'm going to drag it into my timeline here. And I want to do an animation track. So I'm going to do add animation. And then we're going to animate this. So I'm going to hit record. And just to lock in a key, I'm just going to sort of move it up and down. You'll see a little dot appears there. And then let's say we go, I'm going to hold control, or actually, is it shift? Yeah, if you just roll your wheel in and then you hold shift, you can go left and right. But if you roll your wheel in, you could zoom in and out of this timeline. So at 30, I'm just going to bring this Space Invaders text here, which is my title, all the way down to the center here. And so you can see here, as it plays, it goes down here. And what I'd like to do is actually, once Space Invaders appears down there, I'm going to have a button appear. And that button is going to be the way that we start our game. So let's go ahead and in our canvas, let's create just a U. Well, do we have a main menu? I guess this welcome panel is our main menu. So I'm going to right click on this and I'm going to go to UI here. And I'm going to select the Text Mesh Bro button. And I'm going to double up the size. Let's go 2, 2, 2. And actually, we could uncheck record here. And something else to notice is, now notice what happens when I press play. My Space Invaders title animates downward, but that's not what I want. I want it to, actually, we could do it where it, we're going to do it right where it animates when our game, now I'm thinking about it, like maybe it just starts in this view and that comes down right when our game starts. So for now, we'll just leave it alone. But really what's causing that to happen is if we go to our title here, we go down to that playable director object, we have a play on awake. So what we might do, just so you can even learn how to trigger that through code, is we might script it anyway that like once we're in our intro scene, the Space Invaders title comes down. But more importantly, what I want to do is I'm going to take this button here and I'm going to go up top and I'm going to deactivate it. Well, once we actually let's give it the title some, let me close this for a second. Let's go to our button here and let's change the text to start. Something like that. And then on the button above here, we're just going to deactivate that. So what I want is when the Space Invaders gets down here and it's sitting somewhere in the center like that, I want the button to appear below it so we could start our game. So let's select our Space Invaders title again, and let's select the title timeline track here. And I'm going to double click it to open this back up. Now what I'd like to do is send a signal. And what that signal is going to do is it's going to activate that button. Like it's going to turn it on. It's going to set its activation. So you'll see this little pin here. It says show hide timeline markers. On this timeline marker at about 30, I can right click and I can add a signal emitter. And what this does is this signal, and it has a little exclamation point here because it's missing at the actual, it says it has no signal asset. We're going to create a signal asset. That's sort of our receiver. But what it's saying is once our timeline hits to about frame, looks like it's on 29 here. Like once it plays through on 29. And if you click here and you're like, why isn't this letting me do anything? You have to actually select the asset in order to scrub through like this. But once it hits about 29, I'll try to nudge this over just one more. So it's on 30. Once it hits there, it'll do something. It'll call. It'll add it'll send a signal out. And so we can create a signal here. And so what I'm going to do is inside this art folder, or let's see, assets, game, Space Invaders, inside this animation folder, I'm going to new folder and I'm just going to call this signals. And let's name this signal, let's see, welcome signal. Just because it's used for, or we should name it appropriately. Let's say start button activated signal. And let's save that in here. Now we have this signal. Now there's no exclamation point because it's named. And it's actually sitting inside the signals folder. So we have a signal here. But we don't have anything that's receiving that signal. So we can add a signal receiver onto the signal emitter. And what we're going to do is I'm going to drag this button, drop it in here, and then the function here is this button has a bunch of functions on it. And you could see there's like Boolean enabled, interactive, all this stuff. There's the game object itself, which has set active Boolean. So what I want to do is I want to turn this on once the signal hits to about there. Let's see if that works. Boom, you can see that our button works. So that's one way. We're going to be using more signal receivers. We're actually probably going to do a little bit of scripting. We'll have signals call code. Now that we have that, let's save this. We have a nice little intro, and then we have our start button. Well, we want to wire it up so that when I click start, it starts the countdown timer. So let's go ahead and do that. And so the way we can do that is on our button here, I'm just going to make it visible for a second. Remember, we have this on click here. So I'm going to hit the plus sign. And inside of here, I can actually grab my game manager and drop it inside of here. And then we have, it says no function. Well, if I go to the game manager script here, you can see that there's send messages, strings, all this other stuff. And actually, you know what? I think we need to actually not do our game manager, but we need to do our UI manager, I think. And then inside of this UI manager, we have the, let's see, is it game object? Update countdown, stop coroutine. Let's take a look at that script really quick. We might have to make something public. Actually, now that I think about it, what we should do is actually have the game manager switch the state since we wired the game manager to the UI manager. So I'm just dragging the game manager in there. And you'll notice that we don't have access to the set game state, the state to change it in here. We need to create another method in the game manager so that when we click start, it sets it to countdown. So let's open up our game manager, actually, not our UI manager. All right, so what we can do is at the very bottom here is we can create, let me go ahead and delete this update. We haven't used that yet. As we can just say public, because we need to access this void on, let's see, start button set state. And then within this, I'm just going to say, let's see, we have set game state here that takes in a new state. I can set the, I can call set game state. And then let's check this. And the state that we're going to set in is game state. Thought we had a countdown. Play, pause, playing. Oh, I have this. There we go, countdown. Sorry, I have a little recording thing that's always blocking. So what I want to do is call this this variable here, or this method here, on start button set state, and then it'll pass in the game state here, countdown state. Let's try that out. All right, so let me deactivate this button for a second. Here's our welcome panel. Let's press play. All right, if I click start, oh, you know what? We never actually set that in our button. So let's open up our button really quick. And the function that we want is a public variable that we made, which was on start button set state. So let's try that again. And you could see that my welcome panel is disabled, but our countdown text is enabled. So that's it for this one. We should work on sort of like getting that countdown timer to actually start working. We'll work on that in the next video.